Hello there, Smitty G here with another one of my little lesson videos. Today I'm going to be giving you a quick introduction to the modes of the major scale. Now, the definition of a mode in its simplest form is it's any scale going from a particular note to that note's octave. So any scale has modes, but when most people start talking about the modes, what they're referring to are the classical modes of the major scale. So that's what I'm going to run down very quickly here. Now I'm going to tell you up front that this lesson is going to make a whole lot more sense if you know the notes on your strings. If you don't, I'll give my best to make this somewhat followable, but it's going to be a lot less clear to you as to exactly what I'm doing. If you do know your notes up and down the strings, this will be fairly obvious what's going on. All right, so what I'm going to do is start off with a G major scale. Now in the key of G, the distinguishing note is that F sharp. All the notes are natural, or just regular letters, except the F, which is raised up to an F sharp. So I'm going to play those notes going from G to G, which is what we tend to call a G major scale. So I'll start on the open string G, second fret will give me an A, go to a B string for B, first fret will give me C, third fret will give me D, open E string, second fret will give me F sharp, third fret will give me G. So that's a G major scale, one octave G major scale. Now since I took the G major scale and only went from one of its notes, the G itself, to an octave of that note, I also played a mode in this particular case. This is the first mode of the major scale. We have a Greek name for it, the Ionian mode. So if somebody says I'm playing G Ionian, they're just being real pretentious about saying they're playing the G major scale for you. Now, if I move up to the second degree, the second note of that scale, that A, and play from A to A, that gives me another mode. Now, don't confuse what's about to happen here. If I get up here and I play the exact same shape I just did a second ago, notice how that sounds different to you. That's the A major scale now, because the intervals stayed the same, I just changed my starting point. That's not what I'm doing here. I'm coming up to that A note, but I'm still going to play the notes of a G major scale, all natural notes except for that F sharp. So I get A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A. So that gives me the Dorian mode. So if somebody says I'm playing a Dorian, what they're telling you is they're playing the key of G major. They're just going from A to A instead of G to G. So now I move on up the neck to the third note, which is a B. So again, keeping the notes in the scale, I get B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B. And that gives me the Phrygian mode. I come up one more degree, the C, and I'm going to go C to C. Again, sticking with the notes of the G major scale. So I got C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C. That gives me the Lydian mode, C Lydian in this particular case. So again, all Lydian means you're going from the fourth degree of the major scale to its octave. Now I'm going to come up to the fifth degree, the D in this particular case, for the Mixolydian. So I got D, then I got E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, and then D again. And that's the Mixolydian mode. I normally go by numbers when I'm talking about them with other musicians. I tend to leave the Greek names out unless I'm talking with music majors. So then we get to the 6th degree, or Aeolian mode. It's also called the natural minor scale. So this is where you get the major-minor relationship. If you've been through my classes, one thing I hammer into you over and over and over, G major and E minor are the exact same thing. And that's what's about to happen here. I'm going to play the notes of the G major scale, but I'm going E to E instead of G to G. That makes it a natural minor pattern, or the Aeolian mode, but again, I'm still in the key of G. So I get E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D, E. Then, finally, I come up to the 7th degree, which is going to be that F sharp, and I get the last mode, which is going to be the Locrian mode. And that's going to go from F sharp to F sharp for the key of G. So I got F sharp, G, A. Then on the next string, I'm going to get that B, C, D. And then I get E and back to F sharp. And of course now, at the 12th fret, I'm back to the G. So if I were to keep this going, I'd be playing the G major scale or the G Ionian mode again. The exact same notes I played down here in the open position. So in its simplest form, that's all modes are. It's the notes of a particular scale starting on different intervals or different note placements. In practice, we can go at this in different ways. Now, the first way I'm going to talk about is more mechanical, and it's what I consider the most useful in the beginning. And that is, what we're doing here is we're playing the key of G, but now you know how to go entirely up the neck. Most people sit here and they know a major scale in only one shape, one position. So if I sit here and say, hey, this song's in G, they only know one place to put their hand in order to take a solo or to try to play a melody. Now you realize that you can put your hand anywhere on the neck, and you're going to be able to play in that key if you know your different shapes. So I could sit here and say, for example, I'm in the key of G. Well, my primary major shape, of course, is down here at the open position or all the way up here at the 12th fret position, and those are a little uncomfortable on this acoustic guitar. So instead, I could sit here and say, well, I'm going to use that D Mixolydian business, because that'll get me a little bit more in the middle of the neck, and I can solo out of this position. Now, you notice I did that little slide up there. That's the other thing that happens. Once I get these patterns under my fingers, I don't lock myself into them. I don't sit here and say, okay, I'm going to use that D Mixolydian business, and that's it, D to D, and I don't do anything else. Of course not. These are jigsaw puzzle pieces. They all interconnect. So I can move myself up and down the neck and always stay in key because I know these shapes. So I can start out here, come down, and now I'm working in that C Lydian shape, drop down to the Phrygian out of that B, to that Dorian, to the open G. So I now have a very efficient way of maneuvering around that neck and confidently remain in key. So that's one of the big advantages we get out of these modes. If you take the time to memorize the shapes, and again, I love using the G major scale and those modes from that derive from it, because those top 3 strings, you basically learn your entire fretboard on those top 3 strings. So once we get comfortable with that, we can translate this information into other keys. But there happens to be a lot of songs in the key of G, so it's a great place to start. So once again, all the modes are, in its simplest form, is just the major scale starting on different scale degrees. Don't confuse a mode and a scale. If I am playing all natural notes and just the only modified note is the F sharp, I'm in the key of G. I'm playing G major. What note I start on and what note I finish on does not matter. Only if I'm trying to define myself modally does that come into play. Because then I'll sit here and say, well, I'm in the key of G, but I'm only going from C to C. Somebody who's trained in the classic stuff will know that's the Lydian mode. But in our case, I just call it the 4th position, 3rd position, 2nd position, because I'm not really worried about the Greek names. I'm worried about knowing my fingering shapes that will get me up and down the neck accurately. So start out with the key of G, start with G to G, then go A to A, B to B, C to C, and so on. Once you can comfortably get up and down that neck and not get lost, then you'll have those jigsaw puzzle pieces memorized in your hands and in your mind, and that's when you can start using them. And that will be another video or 2. Actually, I could probably make about 5 discussions out of the modes and how to apply them. But the first one here was just to introduce you to what the terms are and what the classical shapes are. So take the time to memorize those, because when I come back to this topic later on, I'm going to build on what I discussed here. So I'm going to assume you know your G major scale modes all up and down the neck, and I don't need to recover that information. Have fun with this. Enjoy learning. I hope everybody's being safe out there. See you soon.